I'm Captain Elena Rodriguez, and for 12 years, my family believed I was just another office worker who happened to wear a uniform. What they didn't know was that their disappointing daughter commanded a Naval Intelligence unit and held classified clearance that most people only see in movies. But all of that changed at my sister's wedding when someone finally told them the truth. Growing up in Miami, I was the black sheep in a family of traditional Cuban immigrants. My parents, Miguel and Carmen Rodriguez, had built their American dream around conventional success. Dad owned a successful auto repair shop. Mom was a school administrator, and my younger sister Sophia was everything they'd hoped for in a daughter: beautiful, compliant, and destined for a respectable career in nursing. I was different from the start. While Sophia played with dolls, I was fascinated by ships and maps. My obsession began with my Uncle Carlos, my father's brother, who'd served in the Coast Guard before settling into civilian life. During family gatherings, while everyone else discussed quinceañeras and wedding plans, Uncle Carlos would tell me stories about his time at sea. Mija, he'd whisper, using his pet name for me. The ocean teaches you who you really are. It strips away everything fake and shows you what matters. When I announced in high school that I wanted to attend the Naval Academy, my parents' reaction was swift and brutal. Absolutely not, my father declared, slamming his coffee cup down so hard it cracked. We didn't sacrifice everything to come to this country so our daughter could play sailor. It's not playing, Poppy, I protested. It's serving my country. My mother crossed herself dramatically. What about marriage? What about children? What man wants a wife who's been living with thousands of men on a ship? Sophia, 17 at the time, watched this exchange with wide eyes. Later, she slipped into my room. I think what you want to do sounds exciting, she whispered. But maybe Mommy has a point about it being dangerous? Even then, Sophia was learning the family dance, show brief support for Elena before returning to the approved narrative. When my acceptance letter to Annapolis arrived, my parents refused to acknowledge it. Uncle Carlos, however, was thrilled. That night, he pulled me aside. I've been saving money for something important, he said. Turns out this is it. True to his word, he helped with expenses my parents refused to cover. The morning I left for the Naval Academy, they were conspicuously absent. Only Sophia stood in the driveway, tears in her eyes. Write to me, she said, hugging me tightly. And Elena? Be careful. The Naval Academy was brutal that first year. While other midshipmen received care packages and proud phone calls, my contact from home was limited to brief, stilted conversations with Sophia and occasional notes from Uncle Carlos. My roommate Jessica noticed. Your family military too? She asked one evening. Just my uncle, I replied. My parents think I'm ruining my life. Through Jessica and our small group of female midshipmen, I found my chosen family. We supported each other through the physical demands, academic pressure, and the constant fight to prove we belonged in a traditionally male environment. I graduated with honors, specializing in intelligence operations. Uncle Carlos attended the ceremony alone from my family, beaming with pride as I received my commission. My parents sent a card, a generic congratulations message with no personal note. My first assignment was to Naval Intelligence Command in Norfolk. Within 2 years, I'd proven myself exceptional at pattern recognition and threat assessment. My commanding officers took notice, and promotions came steadily. But at home, my career was systematically diminished. Elena's still in the Navy. I'd hear my mother tell relatives. Some kind of office job. We keep hoping she'll meet a nice man and settle down. During rare visits home, my father would shake his head. Still playing dress-up, I see. When are you going to get a real job? After 5 years of this treatment, I stopped sharing details about my work. When they asked what I did, I'd give vague responses about administrative duties and paperwork. It was easier than fighting for recognition they refused to give. Meanwhile, Sophia thrived in their approval. She became a pediatric nurse, married her college boyfriend David, and bought a house 20 minutes from our parents. Every milestone was celebrated with elaborate parties and endless praise. Now this is what success looks like, my father would announce at these gatherings, his arm around Sophia. A real career, helping people, a good husband, roots in the community. The implication was always clear. My choices represented the opposite of success. By my 10th year of service, I'd risen to lieutenant commander and was heading a classified intelligence unit tracking terrorist financing networks. My work had prevented several potential attacks, but I couldn't discuss any of it due to security classifications. Uncle Carlos passed away during my 8th year of service. At his funeral, he'd left me a letter. Mija, it read, I know your parents don't understand, but what you're doing matters. Don't let their blindness dim your light. 2 years later, I received the news that would change everything. My promotion to captain at age 32, making me one of the youngest female captains in Naval Intelligence. It was the culmination of everything I'd worked for, but I told no one in my family. That same week, Sophia called with exciting news. Elena, I'm getting married, she squealed through the phone. David proposed during our vacation in Key West. Congratulations, Jimena, I said, genuinely happy for her. I can't wait to meet him properly. I'd met David briefly during my last visit, but we'd barely exchanged more than pleasantries. He seemed nice enough, a high school teacher with a gentle demeanor who clearly adored my sister. I want you to be my maid of honor, Sophia continued. I know we've grown apart over the years, but you're my sister. Please say yes. The request surprised me. Given our increasingly distant relationship and our parents' obvious preference for Sophia's friends and cousins, I'd assumed I'd be relegated to a minor role. Of course, I replied. I'd be honored. Planning the wedding for my base in Norfolk was challenging, but Sophia made it work. We had video calls about dresses, phone conversations about flowers, and slowly, I felt reconnected to my sister in a way I hadn't experienced since high school. 3 weeks before the wedding, I requested leave and flew to Miami. The family dynamics hadn't changed. My mother immediately commented on my appearance. Elena, you look so thin. The Navy must not feed you well. My father emerged from his study. Look who's here, our little sailor. Still floating around on boats instead of finding a husband. Sophia interceded quickly. She just got here, Poppy. Give her a chance to settle in. That evening, Sophia brought David over for dinner so we could get acquainted before the wedding. He was exactly as I'd remembered, kind, soft-spoken, and clearly devoted to my sister. But throughout dinner, I noticed him studying me with curious glances. Elena, he said during a lull in conversation, Sophia mentioned you work in intelligence. That must be fascinating work. Before I could respond, my father interjected. Intelligence is a fancy word for office work. Elena pushes papers around and pretends it's important. David's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't pursue the topic. Later, as we cleared dishes, he asked quietly, How long have you been in the Navy? 12 years, I replied. And you're stationed where? Norfolk, mostly. Though I travel quite a bit for work. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition? But my mother called from the dining room before he could respond. The rehearsal dinner was held at an upscale restaurant in Coral Gables. Both families came together for the first time, and I found myself seated between David's parents and an elderly great-aunt who spent the evening detailing her various medical procedures. David's father, Robert Chin, was a quiet man who seemed to observe more than he spoke. His mother, Linda, was warm and inclusive, asking genuine questions about my life. What kind of work do you do in the Navy, Elena? Linda asked during the salad course. Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. Oh, Elena does administrative work. Very safe, very predictable. Not like those dangerous jobs some military people have. I saw Robert's eyebrows furrow slightly, but he remained silent. After dinner, as guests mingled over coffee, Robert approached me. Elena, may I have a word? We stepped onto the restaurant's terrace, overlooking the Miami skyline. My son mentioned you work in intelligence, he said carefully. I spent 30 years with the State Department, much of it in security-related positions. I recognized the look of someone who carries real responsibility. I stared at him, surprised by his perceptiveness. David told you what I do. He mentioned your work seemed more complex than your parents indicated. He has good instincts about people. Robert paused. Whatever you actually do, I suspect it's significant. And I suspect your family doesn't fully understand it. It's complicated, I said diplomatically. He nodded knowingly. It always is when families can't see past their own expectations. The wedding morning dawned perfect, sunny and warm with a gentle breeze off the bay. I joined Sophia and her bridesmaids at the hotel for hair and makeup, steeling myself for hours of wedding chatter and my mother's commentary. "Elena, darling," my mother announced as I entered the suite, "I've told the stylist to do something about those military muscles of yours. Too much definition isn't feminine." Sophia shot me an apologetic look as I submitted to the makeup artist's ministrations. The other bridesmaids, all Sophia's nursing school friends, chatted about their boyfriends and career plans while I sat quietly, feeling increasingly out of place. "So, Elena," asked Carmen, one of Sophia's closest friends, "any special man in your life?" "Not currently," I replied. "That's such a shame," cooed another bridesmaid. "Is it hard to date in the military? All that travel and those regulations." Before I could answer, my mother interjected. "Elena's always been career-focused. Hasn't made time for the important things in life." The familiar sting of dismissal hit me, but I'd learned to let these comments slide. This was Sophia's day, not mine. As we finished getting ready, Sophia pulled me aside. "I'm sorry about Mommy," she whispered. "You know how she gets." "It's fine," I said automatically. "Today is about you." The ceremony was beautiful. Sophia looked radiant walking down the aisle, and David's face, when he saw her, contained everything a bride could hope for: love, awe, and absolute certainty. Standing at the altar as maid of honor, I found myself genuinely moved by their exchange of vows. After the ceremony, we were whisked away for photos while guests proceeded to the reception venue, an elegant ballroom overlooking Biscayne Bay. By the time we arrived, cocktail hour was in full swing. Throughout dinner, I endured the usual family performance. My parents regaled tables with stories of Sophia's nursing career and community involvement, while I was relegated to brief, dismissive mentions. "Both our girls are so different," I overheard my mother telling a table of relatives. Sophia always knew exactly what she wanted: stability, family, making a difference in her community. Elena was always searching for something. We still hope she'll find it and come back home. During the father-daughter dance, I watched my father beam with pride as he waltzed with Sophia. It was a tender moment, and I felt genuine happiness for my sister despite the familiar pang of being the disappointing daughter. As the formal dances concluded and general dancing began, I headed toward the bar. My mother intercepted me with a tall man in tow. "Elena, meet Dr. James Morrison. He just opened a cardiology practice in Aventura." The setup couldn't have been more obvious. Dr. Morrison seemed nice enough, if slightly uncomfortable with my mother's transparent matchmaking. "Your mother mentioned you're visiting from out of town," he said politely. "Yes, I live in Virginia most of the time." "Elena's job keeps her moving around," my mother interjected, "but we're hoping she'll find something more stable soon." 32 is such a crucial age for a woman. Dr. Morrison's eyes widened at her bluntness, and I felt heat rise to my face. "If you'll excuse me," I said tightly, "I need to check on something." I escaped to the ladies' room, leaning against the marble counter and breathing deeply. Just a few more hours, I told myself. When I returned, I noticed a cluster of relatives gathered around my father near the back of the ballroom. As I approached, I caught fragments of their conversation. "Never understood the appeal myself," my father was saying. "Elena could have done anything. She had the grades for medical school, law school. But she got this military bug and wouldn't let it go." "Does she see combat?" asked an elderly cousin, looking concerned. My father laughed. "God, no. She sits in an office somewhere doing paperwork. Though she likes to make it sound more important than it is." I froze, hidden behind a floral arrangement. The casual dismissal of 12 years of service, of classified operations that had saved lives, of the responsibility I carried daily, it crystallized every moment of hurt I'd accumulated over the years. "The real shame," my father continued, "is that she's wasted her youth on this fantasy. No husband, no children, no real accomplishments. Sophia, thank God, had more sense. I was about to walk away when I noticed David approaching the group, his expression unreadable. What will Elena have to show for her life when this military phase is over? My father concluded. Sophia will have a family, a legacy. Elena will just have whatever participation trophies they give out for filing reports. The group chuckled, and I felt something inside me break. 12 years of distinguished service, classified operations, lives saved, all reduced to participation trophies for filing reports. David had reached the edge of the group by now, close enough to have heard my father's dismissive summary. What happened next changed everything. Without warning, David stepped forward, came to perfect attention, and executed a crisp military salute. "Captain Rodriguez, ma'am," he said in a clear, carrying voice. The laughter died instantly. Conversations around us faltered as heads turned toward our group. My father's smile vanished, replaced by confusion. "I'm sorry, what did you call her?" my father asked, looking between David and me. David maintained perfect military bearing. "Captain Elena Rodriguez, sir. Naval Intelligence Command, currently commanding the counter-terrorism financial investigation unit." Silence spread outward like ripples in a pond. My mother's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. My father's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and shock. "There must be some mistake," my mother managed. "Elena works in an office." "She's not, she doesn't." "With respect, Mrs. Rodriguez," David continued formally, "your daughter commands over 300 personnel and oversees intelligence operations across 7 countries. Her unit's work has prevented multiple terrorist attacks and saved countless civilian lives." "But you're a teacher," I said, finding my voice. "How do you?" David smiled slightly, never breaking his formal posture. "High school history teacher, yes ma'am. But also Lieutenant Commander David Chen, Naval Reserve Intelligence. I've been following your unit's work for years. The Rodriguez protocols for tracking terrorist financing are taught at the War College now." My father stared at me as if seeing a stranger. "Is this true?" Before I could answer, another voice joined the conversation. "It's absolutely true," said Robert Chen, stepping forward. "Your daughter's reputation in intelligence circles is exceptional. I had the privilege of working with her unit during my last State Department assignment." The bubble of silence around us had expanded to encompass half the reception. From across the room, I could see Sophia making her way toward us, concern etched on her face. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked, her voice small and uncertain. 12 years of dismissed achievements crystallized in that moment. I straightened to my full height, unconsciously adopting the posture that commanded respect from admirals and department heads. "I tried, Mommy. For years, I tried. But you and Poppy had already decided that my choice to serve was a mistake, a phase, a failure to live up to your expectations. Every promotion, every commendation, every professional milestone was met with the same dismissal, that I was wasting my potential, avoiding real responsibility, playing dress-up instead of building a meaningful life." My father's face had drained of color. "But Captain, that's a high rank. You're only 32. "One of the youngest female captains in Naval Intelligence," David confirmed. "Ma'am, if I may, the operation you coordinated last year in the Mediterranean, my reserve unit provided analytical support. It was brilliant tactical work." Sophia had reached our group by now, her eyes wide with confusion. "Elena, what's happening?" David turned to his new wife. "I'm sorry for the disruption, Amor, but I couldn't stand by and listen to your parents mischaracterize your sister's service any longer." "Mischaracterize how?" Sophia asked, looking between her new husband and me. I took a deep breath. "Sophia, I've never been completely honest about my military career. I'm not just some administrative officer. I'm a captain in Naval Intelligence, commanding a counter-terrorism unit." Her eyes widened. "A captain? Like, with bars and everything?" Despite the tension, I smiled. 4 bars, actually. And significant security clearance. "But why wouldn't you tell us?" She looked hurt rather than impressed. "Because every time I try to share my achievements, our parents made it clear they thought I was wasting my life. After a while, it was easier to let them believe what they wanted than to fight for recognition they weren't willing to give. My father found his voice, attempting damage control as he became aware of the growing audience. Well, this is quite a surprise. Of course, we're very proud of Elena. We just had no idea about her responsibilities. The transparent insincerity of his sudden pride triggered something in me. 12 years of diminishment couldn't be erased with one convenient moment of recognition.
No, Poppy.
You're not proud. You're embarrassed not of me, but of how wrong you've been. For 12 years, you've told everyone who would listen that I was wasting my life playing sailor. You've belittled my choices, dismissed my career, and treated my service as a personal failure. The reception had gone completely silent now. In any other circumstance, I would have been mortified, but years of briefing admirals and congressional committees had burned away my fear of public speaking. I've led operations that saved lives. I've made decisions under pressure that determined whether people lived or died. I've been decorated for valor and strategic excellence. I hold clearances that allow me to see intelligence that shapes national security policy. And through all of it, I've received not one word of support or recognition from my own family. My mother had begun to cry, her carefully applied makeup streaking down her face. "We were just worried about you," she whispered. "No, you were disappointed in me," I corrected gently. "You wanted me to be a copy of Sophia, and when I chose a different path, you decided it was wrong without ever trying to understand it." Sophia stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years, I thought you were just—" "I don't know what I thought. I didn't want to put you in the middle," I said honestly. "You were always trying to keep the peace, and I didn't want to force you to choose sides." "There shouldn't have been sides," she said, her voice breaking. "We're family." An uncomfortable silence descended until Robertson stepped forward. "If I may," he said, addressing my parents directly. "As someone who's worked in national security for 3 decades, I can tell you that your daughter has served this country with exceptional distinction. That's not something to tolerate or dismiss. It's something to celebrate." Several guests murmured agreement, and I noticed some of the older men in the crowd, likely veterans themselves, nodding solemnly. My father looked around, suddenly aware that he was on the wrong side of the room's sentiment. He straightened his shoulders and did something I'd never seen him do. He extended his hand to me, not as his daughter, but as an equal. "It seems I owe you an apology, Elena." "Captain Rodriguez." The gesture was small, perhaps calculated given our audience, but it was also the first acknowledgement of my professional identity he'd ever offered. I hesitated for just a moment before accepting his handshake. "Elena is fine, Poppy." He nodded, genuine emotion crossing his face. "Perhaps we could talk more about your work after the reception. I'd like to understand what you actually do." It wasn't a full reconciliation. Too much hurt existed for that. But it was an opening. My mother wiped her tears, trying to regain composure. "Yes, of course. We'd love to hear about everything." Sophia stepped forward, taking control of the situation. "I think it's time for the cake cutting. Elena, would you help me with the ceremony?" She was offering me a graceful exit from the spotlight, and I took it gratefully. As the crowd began to disperse, David approached me quietly. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," he said, "but I couldn't stand by and listen to them diminish who you are." "Thank you," I replied simply. "You risked disrupting your own wedding reception for my dignity. That means more than you know." He smiled. "Let's just say I have deep respect for the chain of command." The rest of the reception proceeded with a strange, new energy. Guests who had previously given me polite but disinterested greetings now approached with questions and congratulations. My parents moved through the crowd with fixed smiles, accepting congratulations for their daughter's achievements as though they'd been supportive all along. As the evening wound down, Sophia found me near the exit. "So," she said, wonder still in her voice, "my big sister is kind of a big deal." I laughed. "I just do my job, Sophia. A job that involves saving lives and national security." She shook her head. "All these years, I thought you were just avoiding settling down. I never realized. I have settled down, I said gently. Just not in the way they expected. My career, my service, that's my life, and it's a meaningful one. She nodded slowly. I'd like to hear more about it. The real version, not the watered-down one you've been telling us. I'd like that too, I said, feeling a weight lifting that I hadn't fully acknowledged until now. She hugged me then, careful not to wrinkle her wedding dress. I'm proud of you, Elena. I should have said that years ago. The morning after the wedding, I was preparing to check out of my hotel when my parents appeared at my door, looking uncomfortable but determined. May we come in? My father asked, his usual authority replaced by humility. Over the next hour, they offered apologies that, while imperfect, were more than I'd ever expected to receive. They spoke of worry, of outdated expectations, of their failure to see past their own narrow vision of success. We want to start over, my mother said, to get to know the daughter we have instead of mourning the one we thought we wanted. The conversation was awkward, filled with gaps and misunderstandings that 12 years of distance couldn't be bridged in one morning. But it was a beginning. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of the USS Arlington, receiving the Navy Commendation Medal for my unit's role in disrupting a major terrorist financing network. As I stepped back from the podium, I caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd, my parents, dressed in their best clothes, watching with expressions I'd never seen directed at me before. Unmistakable pride. They had flown to Norfolk after I'd sent a cautious invitation, unsure if they would accept. Not only had they come, but they'd spent the previous day touring the base, meeting my colleagues, and beginning to understand the world I'd built without them. That evening, over dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Chesapeake Bay, my father raised his glass. To Captain Elena Rodriguez, he said, using my rank naturally. Who knew exactly who she was meant to be, even when we couldn't see it. And who had the courage to become herself despite our blindness, my mother added softly. As we clinked glasses, I felt something I'd stopped believing was possible, the hope of a relationship based on who I actually was, not who they had wanted me to be. The wounds of 12 years don't heal overnight. But that moment at Sophia's wedding, when David's recognition forced my parents to see me clearly for the first time, became the beginning of something new. Something built on truth rather than disappointment, on acceptance rather than expectations. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in foreign waters, but across the dining room table of your childhood home. And sometimes, it takes a stranger's courage to help your family finally see who you've been all along.